Okay, so what I'm going to go over today is some effects for combining textures with text. If you go ahead and download my TextYour file there from Schoology, this is what you should see when you come into the file. Now, the way this file is broken up is I have different folders here for each one of these different text layers. The first one, woodworking, is already done for us. If you go into that folder, you can see that there is an overlay layer there that gets applied to the text there, the woodworking text. And then we have the text layer for woodworking itself that you can turn on and off, see what's going on. It's got some effects on it, nice inner shadow. And then finally, there's one more texture for the background, right, that gives it some, different wood looks. The other thing there that's nice is it has a nice hue and saturation setting so that you can adjust the color. If I turn that off, right, it just looks like kind of basic wood. Turn that on, and it looks more like, I don't know, laminated wood, kind of a nicer effect. So to do this, to add different kinds of textures to text, the process is pretty simple. The next one, the metal folder, I have all the textures in there for you, but I haven't applied any of the settings. So, right, the first one, there's a metal texture here over top of the words heavy metal. And then behind the words heavy metal, there's another layer that is just kind of some rusty metal. And what I'm going to do to apply this top layer to my text is I'm going to go into this layer by right-clicking on it, and I'm going to go down to Create Clipping Mask. And by doing that, right, this metal texture only gets applied to the text there. But it still doesn't separate very well from the background, so what I'm going to need to do then is right-click on the words heavy metal, go into Blending Options. I'm going to choose this one called Bevel and Emboss there. And then once I've got that selected, right, I like the look of a hard chisel. You can adjust the depth until it looks correct, right? You can choose to turn the softening down, even mess with the size. But the idea, right, is by putting some sort of bevel and emboss there, it sort of looks like somebody stamped that out of the metal. Okay. So the next one, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of leeway. I've given you the text, but this time I've given you no textures, so you're going to need to track those down on your own. To do that, we're going to make use of a site here called texturelabs.org. You can find that link on the Schoology page, right? So for world history, I'm thinking that I want my background texture to maybe feel like some, linen, some sort of old paper type material. I'm just going to search through there till I find something I like. Here, I like this burlap feed sack, I guess, and I'll download that. And then I'm also going to need a texture for the text. And since I want it to look like maybe that word got printed on that burlap sack, I'll look through here and find something, well, not all this blood, but hopefully something that looks like a nice ink pressing. Might just have to scroll through a few pages here. Let's see. Oh, this is more along the lines of what I'm looking for. I'm going to go ahead and grab this ink paint heavily weathered ink guy, and then I'm going to download that. Okay, and with those two layers downloaded then, my job at this point is to go into File, File, Place Embedded, and then I'm going to find those files that I need. First, I'm just going to bring in, it doesn't really matter which order I bring it in, I'm going to bring in my ink paint layer first. And I actually see a mistake I'm making right now, but it's okay. It'll help me explain it to you. So I bring that in, and oh boy, based on what I had selected down here in the layers panel, it's not in my history folder, so I'm going to drag it down there. Right, so now it's on top of world history, but it's kind of going all over the place. So in order to crop that down, I'm just going to make a little rectangular selection there. And then, use my layer mask button to sort of crop off that part of that I don't need. Then I'm going to right click on that and go down to Create Clipping Mask. Okay, so we've got it set up so that the text looks like it's made out of ink, but it's still being printed on some, boring white paper. So in order to fix that, I'm going to have to go again to File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to find that burlap I downloaded earlier, Place. Okay, again, I just have to put it in the right order. There we go. Now, again, I'm going to crop this so that it doesn't go on top of everything. Just make a nice rectangle selection, go into layer mask, mask that off. But what I still see that bothers me when I zoom in here, hitting Command plus, see how this is like white splotches and black splotches? That doesn't really make sense if we're thinking about burlap. So what I'm going to actually do here on my world history layer is change the blending mode. I'm going to go down and find something that makes it feel, and you can see almost immediately, right, that the selections here, these different modes, make it look like that text is actually printed on top of the burlap sack. I tend to think multiply is a pretty good one for text effects, but since we're putting this on, sort of a earthen looking material, I'm actually going to use this one that's called linear burn. That gives me some sort of, discrepancy there in those gray tones. And that kind of looks more weathered, more accurate. And again, the other thing you can always play around with, jumping into those blending options. Maybe you want to see what it looks like if you play around with some of these other settings in here. It's maybe satin. For something like this, maybe not as necessary, but you always want to see what is it that you can do. Be creative, go out there, explore. Obviously, having a glowing world history bag doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But you could think of it maybe instead of as being glowing, you could maybe take a color from this burlap sack. Now it kind of just looks hazier, especially if you mess with the different kinds of modes here, right? Changing it to maybe a light or a hard light. Always room to be creative, right? So, essentially that's the basics of creating textures with text, right? It's just about creating a clipping mask, using those blending styles, and trying to make it all work cohesively together. The last three on the bottom here are all your choice. So again, you're gonna, select whatever kind of title you want. Maybe you pick something like Digital Life. Then it's your job to go out and think of, well, what textures represent digital life? Could be like a circuit board, or it could be, a computer screen. It could be whatever you want it to be. But I'll leave it up to you. That's the assignment. Go forth and prosper.